Right, so before we continue from here, I'm going to go to the data, and here I'm going to create a new file. So the file that I'm going to create here is Firestore repository, and here I'm going to define the method and functionality of adding a task to the Firebase Firestore, editing it, deleting it, and all those stuff. Class Firestore repository, and here we are going to create a final variable Firebase Firestore, which I will call Firestore, like that, constructor like that. So inside here I need to create a method for adding a task. So it's going to be a future of type void, which is going to be called add task. This is going to be to have a required task, required stream user ID, and it's going to be an async method. Right, so we need to create a task. So this task is a model class, and model classes goes in the domain. So inside this task management folder, we can go to domain, and we are going to create a new file called task. And in here, we are going to create a class task. So this task has a final string ID. Okay, so I'm going to generate what I want to create is the data class section. I'm going to select all of this and click on OK. Let me remove this quickly. So by doing that, it has created the equality to string, copy with, to map, and from map. And this is possible because of an extension that I have installed inside of my Android Studio, and is a plugin rather, not an extension. There's this plugin called that data class. Now here we want to save that particular task to Firestore. So you can await firestore.collection. So the collection that we want to save to is users.doc user ID.collection tasks.add. Want to add task dot to map, like that. So this is going to save that particular task to the Firestore inside the users collection under the user ID and under the tasks collection. So, but if you want to save the ID of this task inside of the task itself, we can assign this to a docref, and then we can say await docref.update. So we can update. So this one takes a map, and we can use curly braces for that. So we can update the ID with docref.id, like that. And with that, we are done with the add task method. Let me click on save, like that. So we also need to create update task method. So for update task method is going to be a feature of type void as well. And I'm going to call this method update tasks as required task, required task ID, and required string user ID, and this is string task ID. So it's an async. So we are going to await firestore.collection. So the collection is users.doc user ID.collection. So the collection is tasks.doc task ID.update. We update it with the new task dot to map. So with that method, we are going to update a particular task using the task ID and the user ID. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do is load these tasks from Firebase. So we are going to create a method for that. So the method for that is going to be a stream of a list of tasks, right? And I'm going to call it load tasks. And we are going to load task of a particular user. So we are going to pass string user ID like that. And in return, we are going to return Firebase Firestore dot instance dot collection. So is the user's collection dot doc, the user ID dot collection. The collection is tasks, and then we want to have the latest task that has been added to be the first one to appear, and then it goes like that. So for that we can use order by. So we can say order by date, okay, and then we can say descending order by date, descending true, with that, and then dot snapshots. So for the map we get a query snapshot, and then we return query snapshot dot docs dot map document, and then return task dot from map doc dot data dot to list. Right, so we need to load, we need now to create another method for loading tasks that are complete. So I'm going to copy this method here. I'm going to paste it at the bottom here. So here I want us to load completed tasks. So load completed tasks. We are still going to pass the user ID, but here, so here instead of order by, we are going to use where the field that we want to use is complete, and say is equal to true. So this is going to filter those that are complete. All right. Again, we want to load by those that are incomplete. So we are going to load incompleted tasks. This we are going to change this value to false to load the tasks that are incomplete. Finally, we want to delete a task. I'm going to create a method for that. So which is a future of type void. Is called delete task required string user ID, also a required string task ID async. We are going to await Firestore dot collection. So the collection is users dot doc user ID dot collection. So the collection is tasks dot doc the task ID, and then dot delete like that. So that is going to delete the task by the task ID. Okay, so finally, as you remember, we want a situation where we can add a task as complete. So when we tap on the checkbox, we want to set it as complete. So we can do that as well. So I'm going to create a method for that as well. So and that method is going to be called future. We're going to return a future of type void called update task completion. So this is I'm going to take required string user ID. Also is going to take string task ID, and also is going to take a required string, a required boolean, is complete. So we're going to like that. So this is a synchronous operation. I'm going to let me copy this. So we are going to await Firestore collection users user ID task ID dot update. What you want to update, it needs a map, so we pass curly braces here. Update the is complete with the value of is complete here, like that. So this is going to update the task when we hit the checkbox. So finally, what we need to do here is to create providers for these methods. But first of all, we need to create provider for this particular repository. So I'm going to use Riverpod, keep alive to true, Firestore repository, Firestore repository, Firestore repository ref. So here we're going to return Firebase repository, passing Firebase Firestore dot instance, like that. So here we can import the Riverpod annotation package. We also need a provider for loading the tasks. So it's going to be a stream that yields a list of tasks called load tasks. Load tasks ref. So we need a Firestore repository. Firestore repository equals to ref.watch Firestore repository provider, and then we return Firestore repository dot load tasks. So here, since this is a family, we are going to pass string user ID, and then this user ID is the one that we pass inside of here. So let me first run this build runner again to get those providers created for me and the G file created. I'm sorry for that. I have a bad cold, terrible cold. I forgot to add the G file here to add the part. So part Firestore repository .g .dat. So with that, I can try to run this again, and should now create the files that I need. We also need to create a provider for loading completed tasks and also incompleted tasks. So let me run the build runner again. So, and with that, we have our providers already created, and the G file has been created. So before I use this, I'm going to create the controller real quick. So I'm just going to inside this task management, inside this presentation, I'm going to create the controller for this. Let me call it Firestore instead. Firestore controller. Firestore controller is extends async notifier of type void. So this is going to tell me to override the missing method, and I'm going to delete this one because I don't really need it. So inside here, I'm going to create a method for creating a task, deleting one, and also updating a task. So let's get to it. So future void. add task. So required task required string user ID async. So here, first of all, we update the state. So state is equals to async loading, and then we import this task here, and then final Firestore repository equals to ref.read Firestore repository provider. So state equals to await async value dot guard. So this one gives us a closure. So it return Firebase repository dot add task, and we pass the task and the user ID. So with that, we are going to update the state to loading, error, or data with that particular method. So we also need to create a method for updating the task. So it is going to take the task. It's going to also require string user ID, and also going to require string task ID, like that. So an async method. So here we are going to update the state to const async loading, like that. I'm also going to access the repository with the provider, and then I can change the state to await async value dot guard to Firestore repository update task, passing the task, the user ID, and the task ID. Finally, I want to create the method for deleting the task, and for that I'm going to create yet another method that returns a feature of type void, which I'm going to call delete task. So it has string user ID, and it's going to take a string task ID, like that. So it's an async method. Again, we are going to update the state to const async loading. Then I'm going to access the repository like I did here, and then I'm going to update the state to await async value dot guard. So this gives us a closure, and in return we say Firestore repository dot delete task, passing the user ID and the task ID, like that. So with that, now we have a controller to update the state of our screens, and we have a repository. So this repository, we can use it to add a task. Okay, we add the task to Firebase Firestore. We update a particular task. We load the tasks. We load completed tasks. We load incompleted tasks. We can delete a task, and we can update task completion. So all of this we perform in the repository.